My relationship with my parents was always rough, but it was even harder watching them put my brother Michael on a pedestal all the time. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in their eyes, and I was always the other kid. I remember on my 10th birthday, instead of having a party with friends, my parents dragged me to Michael's soccer game. They grabbed some last-minute cheap cake for me after spending the day cheering for him. Michael got trophies and applause, and I got a stale cake. In high school, I started working at a superstore to earn some money. My dad took every dollar I made, saying I needed to pay for my keep, while Michael got a brand new car for his 16th birthday without having to work a day. Every time I brought it up, I'd get threats of being thrown out, while Michael got praised for the smallest things. My dad is a narcissist and loves to control the lives of others. My mom, on the other hand, says and does whatever my dad asks her to. It feels like my dad has diminished her personal opinion over the years they've spent together. I was 14 years old when my dad suspected that I was dating a guy from my school, and he literally threatened that he would kill me. He did not even listen to me, that the guy was just my friend. And even if he was my boyfriend, why did he have a problem with it? My mom came to my room and told me that I was too young for things like that, and she never thought that I would grow up to be a slut. I could not believe my ears. That was the time I had decided that I was going to leave the house as soon as I turned 18. As that was more than enough, my dad used to control everything in the house, and if we had to go out or were invited to a party, it depended on him if he would allow us to go or not. This made our life a living hell, and all we thought about was leaving that place. I was in high school and I was hired at a superstore nearby and started to earn money. My dad would take every penny I had earned and would tell me that I was staying at his place. I had to contribute to the expenses. I told him several times that I would complain to the police, to which he would reply that he would then kick me out the same day and I would end up on the streets. This was the only fear that kept me in that house, and I could not stand up for myself. When I graduated high school, I had to get into a college, but my dad told me that he was not going to support my education further, as he had already spent a lot of money on my education. Just to mention that I had been going to public schools, and there were no such expenses he had to bear. I was, of course, not able to take admission to college that year, but that year turned out to be the best of my life. I got hired as a waitress in the five-star restaurant and started earning more. I told my parents that I was going to leave and would never see them again. My mom told me that they were glad to be rid of me and would love to never hear from me again. I rented a private room and moved out of my parents' house. I secured admission to college for a bachelor's in business administration, and for the first time in my life, I felt fulfilled and happy. My routine was tough as I had to attend college in the morning, and then I'd work at the restaurant and then I'd study till late for college. That was the most hectic time of my life, but it was worth it. I completed my bachelor's and started applying for jobs as soon as I secured a job in a company. I resigned from the restaurant and took the admissions for my master's. I had been a very motivated and driven person forever, but my family never supported me in anything. After I graduated master's, I already had work experience and did not face any difficulty in landing a job in a reputable company. I celebrated that with my friends and posted about them on Facebook as my siblings were still at it on Facebook. The news reached my family in no time. My siblings congratulated me and told me that they were proud of me. A few days later, I received a text from my dad that he was proud of me and always believed in me. That made me very emotional, and I thought he meant that. But I was wrong. I received the parcel from my family, and I had no idea what it contained when I tore the envelope open. There was a bank statement that said that a certain amount of loan that my dad had taken from the bank needed to be repaid. I called my dad and asked him what all that was about. My dad told me that he had taken the loan to set up a store, but his idea miserably failed, and now he was not even able to repay the loan. He went on and said that as I had landed a well-paid job, it was no big deal for me to repay the loan. I'm still unable to understand how my parents could be this cold and insensitive and what made them think that I have forgotten everything they did to me. I swear I'm going to deal with them the way they dealt with me. Update 1. It all started when I decided to send my parents a parcel, but not just any old parcel. Inside, I included a letter that was pretty heavy. Basically, the letter said that I didn't even recognize them anymore because to me it felt like I had no family. I went on to say that they must have mistaken me for someone else because the family connection just wasn't there for me anymore. The day my dad got the letter, he didn't waste any time. He called me up and straight up told me he couldn't believe I was still the cheap little girl he remembered, and he thought by now I'd have grown up. That stung, but I shot back, telling him that he hadn't changed over the years either. He managed to stay the same. And since I'm his daughter, maybe I just inherited that trait from him. His response was pretty harsh. He said that since I claimed to have no family, that was exactly what I deserved. No family. I ended that conversation pretty quickly, just wished him a great day, and hung up. Later that same day, my mom called. Her tone was different, but not by much. She told me that what I did was really mean, and that she never expected something like that from me. She also threw in that, as the eldest kid in the family, I had certain responsibilities. That really hit a nerve. I couldn't help but ask her why she didn't remember those responsibilities when she and her husband treated me like a doormat all these years. The conversation shifted to money, which seems to be a recurring theme in our talks. I pointed out that the only thing that changed her attitude toward me was the money I started earning. She tried to bring up some loan they took out, implying that I should help them out with it. I shut that down real quick, telling her that the loan wasn't my problem. They didn't take it out for my education or anything that had to do with me, so they should handle it themselves. It's like over the years, our family dynamics have just devolved into this mess of expectations, misunderstandings, and financial entanglements. Throwing that letter in the mix was my way of trying to set some boundaries, to make them see that I'm not just an extension of their needs or an emergency fund they can tap into whenever things get tight for them. It was tough, sure, but sometimes you gotta draw a line. Dealing with this fallout hasn't been easy. Every call seems to dredge up old grievances and misunderstandings that go way back. It's like no matter how much you try to grow and move on, some ties just keep pulling you back to the same old arguments and hurts. But this time, I'm standing my ground. I'm trying to navigate this rocky terrain of family drama, trying to find a balance between respecting where I come from and protecting where I need to go. Update 2. It all kicked off when my brother popped over to see me. He came with some heavy news about our dad. Apparently, Dad's been really struggling with financial stress, and it's been hitting him hard. Things got even worse for him emotionally after I sent that letter saying I didn't consider them my family anymore. When my brother told me this, I couldn't just brush it off. I reminded him of the time Dad flat out told me he wouldn't help with my college expenses, which honestly wasn't asking much from him. It felt like he just abandoned his responsibility when I needed him the most. My brother tried to defend him, saying that Dad's life was already a mess, and I shouldn't make it worse by trying to get back at him for past hurts. But I shot back, telling him that Dad's life was tough because he had a knack for making everyone else's life tough too. It was like he spread his misery around. I was pretty wound up by then and suggested maybe Dad should sell his house to pay off his debts. My brother didn't take that well at all. He got super mad and asked if I wanted to see our parents homeless. I told him bluntly that if they didn't handle their finances and sell the house themselves, the bank was going to force them to do it eventually. They might as well take control of the situation now and maybe move into a rented place instead of ending up somewhere they didn't choose, like, the streets. That conversation didn't end on a high note. My brother stormed out, really angry, and threw at me that I was the worst sibling he'd ever known. Ouch, right? But after cooling down a bit, I decided to call my dad. I needed him to hear from me directly. I told him I was willing to help, but he shouldn't expect it to be with money. I wanted to help him figure things out, maybe help him see things from a different perspective or support him emotionally. Basically, I was trying to offer what I could, but I was clear that opening my wallet wasn't part of the deal. This whole mess has been tough. It's like no matter how hard you try to move forward, family ties can pull you back into the same old conflicts. Update 3. So, here's what went down. I went over to my dad's place and discreetly took a bunch of photos of the house. I was super careful to make sure no one caught on to what I was up to. After that, I put up all the info and those photos on a real estate app, basically putting the house up for sale without actually telling anyone in the family. I even listed my dad's number on the ad so potential buyers would contact him directly. I guess part of me thought I was helping, or maybe I just wanted to shake things up. A couple of days later, my phone rings. It's my dad, and man, he was not happy. He blasted me, saying what I did was the worst thing a daughter could do to her parents. He called me a disgrace to the family and even threatened to call the police on me for advertising his house without his permission. I tried to explain that I thought I was helping, but he was having none of it. He just told me to shut up and hung up the call. In the end, he never did call the police, or at least I never got any calls or notices about it. Realizing maybe things had gone too far, I pulled down the advertisement. I figured I'd made my point and didn't want to escalate things further. It's wild, though, how they still expect so much from me, considering everything. Growing up in that house wasn't easy. I went through a lot of tough times, a lot of abuse. And now, after all these years, just because I've managed to build something for myself, they think I owe it to them to bail them out of their financial messes, like repaying their loans. It feels like if I hadn't made something of myself, they probably wouldn't even bother reaching out to me. It's like they ignored me when I was struggling, but now that I'm doing well, suddenly I'm on their radar. Honestly, this whole thing makes me think about what family really means. It's supposed to be about support and love, right? But all I've felt is pressure and negativity from them. It's exhausting, and sometimes I wonder why I even try with them anymore. Update 4. So a couple of weeks rolled by, and out of the blue, my dad calls me up again. This time, he was kind of tiptoeing around this request for me to cover a few installments of their loan. He promised he'd find a way to handle the rest, and even said he'd pay me back later. But honestly, I was in the middle of moving apartments and needed every dime for that. Plus, I was really set on not getting dragged back into their financial chaos. I straight up told him I couldn't help. I also made it clear that he shouldn't keep hoping I'd change my mind. My stance was firm. His problems were his to deal with. Just like I had never gone to him asking for help, I expected the same courtesy in return. I thought that would be the end of it, but nope, it wasn't. My dad just wouldn't stop. He kept calling, trying every emotional tactic in the book to guilt me into helping. It was like a non-stop barrage of calls and messages that just kept pushing and pushing. I mean, emotional blackmail was the game, and he was playing hard. I was getting pretty fed up with all this drama and pressure. On top of that, I had this whole pile of evidence that just kept growing, like that harsh letter they sent and all those texts from both my mom and dad. Some were straight up threats, and others were just them trying to emotionally manipulate me. It was too much. So I decided enough was enough. I took all that evidence and went to court to file for a restraining order against them. It felt extreme, but honestly, it was necessary to put a stop to all the stress and pressure they were putting on me. The court saw my side of things, thanks to all the proof I had, and granted the restraining order. After that, things got a bit quieter. I received the official notification about the restraining order, but I didn't reach out to them, and they didn't try to contact me either. It was a relief, but also kind of sad when you think about it. Like, it had to come to this: getting a legal order to keep your own family from messing with your peace of mind. Reflecting on all this, it's been a wild ride. It's tough when family ties turn into this kind of turmoil. You grow up thinking family is supposed to be your rock, the ones who've got your back. But then, reality hits, and you realize that sometimes setting boundaries, even really harsh ones like a restraining order, is necessary for your own well-being. Update 5. The day after the restraining order went into effect, my brother Michael comes knocking. He's all frantic, which isn't like him at all. He tells me our dad has gone missing. Yep, vanished into thin air. No one's heard from him in days, not even his closest buddies. Here's the thing, though. Michael thinks I had something to do with it because of the whole restraining order deal. Like, seriously? He started accusing me of making our dad so stressed that he might have done something drastic. I tried to calm him down, told him that's not how any of this works, but he was having none of it. As we're arguing, my phone buzzes. It's a text from a number I don't recognize. I open it, and bam. It's a photo of my dad. He's sitting in some rundown-looking bar, looking pretty worse for wear, with a message that just says, "Help him." No explanation, no location, nothing. Just this cryptic message and a photo. I showed Michael, and his face went white. We decided to call the police and report it, but they told us we needed more to go on before they could do anything major. Frustrated, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I hit up some of Dad's old haunts, asking around if anyone's seen him recently. It turns out he's been spotted at various spots across the city, always looking a bit off, like he's on the run or something. Now, I'm torn. Part of me wants to wash my hands of the whole thing because of all the drama and pain he's caused. But another part, the daughter part, can't just sit back knowing my dad might be in real trouble. Just when I think I'm out of surprises, I get another call, this time from an old family friend. He tells me that my dad was involved in some shady business deals and might be hiding from some pretty dangerous people. Great, just what I needed, right? Like a plot out of some crime drama. Michael and I are trying to piece together the clues and track him down. It's weird teaming up with my brother like this, especially after everything that's gone down. But I guess in times of crisis, you really see who's willing to put aside past differences for the greater good. This whole situation is a mess, and honestly, it's pulling me back into family drama I thought I was done with, but I can't just ignore it. So here I am, stuck in the middle of a mystery, trying to figure out if I'm more worried about my dad's safety or the tangled web of lies and secrets that seems to be unraveling around us. Update 6. After getting that cryptic message about my dad being in some seedy bar, Michael and I have been on a non-stop mission trying to track him down. It feels like we've suddenly been thrust into some detective novel, but trust me, there's nothing glamorous about it. We spent the next few days following up on every lead we got. We visited every dive bar and rundown joint where Dad might have been spotted. It's surreal, really, seeing parts of the city I never knew existed, talking to people who looked like they stepped out of a film noir. One night, just as we were about to call it quits, we get a break. A bartender at this shabby place downtown remembers seeing my dad, says he was with some sketchy looking characters, talking in hushed tones, looking nervous. The bartender even overheard something about a meeting at an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Michael and I decide to check it out. We drive there. The place is practically falling apart, graffiti all over, broken windows. It's the kind of place you'd never go unless you absolutely had to. We sneak in, trying to stay as quiet as possible. And there, in the dim light, we see a group of men arguing. And yep, Dad's right there in the middle of it. Turns out, the old man had gotten himself mixed up in some illegal gambling ring. He'd been trying to make some quick cash to cover his debts, but ended up way over his head. The guys he was dealing with weren't the type to take, "I'll pay you next week" for an answer. They were furious, talking about making an example out of him. Michael and I were about to step in, but before we could, the police raided the place. Someone must have tipped them off. It was chaos, shouting, running. We managed to pull Dad out of there just as the cops started cuffing everyone. It was close, way too close. After the raid, we had a long talk with Dad. He was shaken up, realizing how close he'd come to something really bad. He kept saying he was sorry, that he never meant for things to get this out of hand. It was the first time I'd seen him vulnerable like that in, well, ever. Michael and I decided to help Dad get his life sorted. We helped him set up a payment plan for his debts, got him into some counseling. It's weird, but going through this crisis together has started to mend some of the fractures in our family. Not all, but some. As for me, I've been doing a lot of thinking. This whole ordeal has forced me to reassess what family means to me. It's messy and complicated, and sometimes it feels like you're just bound by shared history and nothing else. But then there are moments, like pulling your dad out of a potential disaster, that make you realize there's also this deep, almost primal bond. I'm not saying everything's perfect now, far from it. There are still plenty of issues we need to work through, but I'm starting to see that maybe, just maybe, there's a way to navigate this complex web of relationships without losing myself in the process. So yeah, that's where we're at, navigating this messy, unpredictable journey of family drama, old wounds, and tentative reconciliations. It's not the kind of adventure I would have chosen, but it's ours. And somehow, we're making it through, one crazy chapter at a time. Update 7. A couple of weeks after the whole warehouse incident, I was at work when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Hesitant, I answered, and on the other end was someone claiming to be a private investigator. My first thought was, what now? Turns out this PI was hired by someone who claimed to be a concerned party interested in my father's well-being. The plot thickens, right? This PI starts telling me that there are some serious allegations against my father, not just the gambling stuff, but something deeper, more sinister. According to him, my dad was supposedly involved in some financial fraud schemes that were much bigger than anything we'd imagined. I'm talking big money, illegal deals, the works. And now, these shady characters weren't just random gamblers, but part of a network my dad had been dealing with for years. Honestly, my head was spinning. I agreed to meet with the PI to get more information, because if this was true, then it wasn't just about family drama anymore. It was about legal consequences that could drag all of us down with him. Meeting the PI was like stepping into a detective movie. He laid out documents, photos, recordings, evidence that my dad had been living a double life we knew nothing about. It was overwhelming. How much could you not know about someone you've called dad your entire life? I took all this info to Michael, and we confronted Dad. It was probably the hardest conversation we've ever had. At first, he denied everything, but as we laid out all the evidence, he broke down. He confessed that he started with small bets and minor fraud to make ends meet, but it spiraled out of control. He was in deeper than he ever intended, owing money to people who you definitely don't want to owe money to. The revelation shook our family to its core. We had to make some tough decisions. Michael and I discussed it and decided that, despite everything, we had to turn him in. It was the only way to possibly mitigate the damage and protect the rest of the family. We went to the authorities and handed over all the evidence the PI had given us. The days following were a blur. Police, lawyers, more dirty secrets spilling out. It was like watching our family legacy crumble in real time. But amidst all this chaos, there was this strange relief. Secrets are a heavy burden, and revealing them, even like this, felt like setting down a weight we'd been carrying without even knowing it. Dad was arrested, and the case quickly started to build. It's heartbreaking and terrifying to see your parent in such a situation, but there was also a sense of justice, of doing the right thing for everyone's sake. Through this ordeal, Michael and I have somehow grown closer. We've been through the ringer, seen the darkest parts of what family can mean, but we've also seen how it can pull you through the toughest times. We're not sure what the future holds for Dad or for us, but we're handling it together. This whole thinga has been a lesson in many things: trust, betrayal, and redemption. It's taught me that family isn't just about blood or shared history. It's about the choices you make, the secrets you keep or reveal, and the lengths you'll go to protect or save each other. Update 8. Things took a tragic turn last week. Just when we thought we were beginning to get a handle on the chaos Dad had left in his wake with his legal troubles, we received a call late at night that none of us were prepared for. Dad had been in a car accident. He was driving alone, late at night, and he'd been drinking. The police said it was a single-car accident. No other vehicles involved. He didn't survive. The news hit like a punch to the gut. Despite all the anger and the mess he'd caused, he was still our dad. The reality that we'd never have a chance to confront him, to maybe reconcile or at least find some closure, was gone in an instant. The days following were a blur. Dealing with the police, the coroner, and then the arrangements for a funeral, everything felt surreal. Michael and I had to pull together, not just for ourselves, but for Mom, too. She was devastated, a complex mix of grief and unresolved anger swirling together. It was tough seeing her like this, all of us navigating through this new grief. At the funeral, seeing the faces of family and a few of Dad's close friends, I realized how complex his life had been, how many different versions of him people carried with them. It made me think about the man he was and the choices he made, the good mixed with the bad. After the funeral, we gathered at Mom's house, going through old photo albums, reminiscing about better times before Dad's problems took over. It was healing in a way, but also opened up old wounds. We talked a lot about forgiveness, about memories, and about how we all had to pick up the pieces and figure out how to move forward. Now we're dealing with the aftermath, not just the emotional fallout, but also the practical aspects of his estate, his debts, and all the legal complexities that didn't just disappear because he had. It's a lot to handle, but Michael and I are tackling it together, supporting Mom as best we can. This chapter of our lives has closed in a way we never anticipated, forcing us to confront our feelings about Dad and each other. It's a process, one that will take time and which won't be easy. But we're learning, maybe the hard way, what it means to be a family, to stick together through the toughest times, and to find strength in each other. Update 9. It's been a few months since Dad's passing, and the dust is finally starting to settle. The initial shock has faded, but the echoes of his sudden departure linger, influencing our days in ways we're just beginning to understand. The process of untangling his estate has been complicated, revealing debts we didn't know about and legal entanglements that have tested our patience and resilience. Michael and I have been working closely, closer than we ever have, to manage these challenges. We've had to learn a lot quickly about legal processes, about each other's strengths and weaknesses, and about how to support Mom through this. She's been stronger than either of us expected, finding a kind of quiet strength that has kept us all grounded. Amid the practicalities, there have also been moments of reflection and unexpected healing. We found letters Dad wrote but never sent, apologies drafted in his shaky handwriting, plans for a future he hoped to rebuild. It's heartbreaking and comforting all at once, seeing these glimpses of remorse, of hope, from a man we thought we had figured out. We held a small memorial on what would have been his birthday, just close family and a few of Dad's oldest friends. It was somber but also filled with stories, laughter, and tears. We celebrated the good memories, acknowledged the bad, and shared our hopes for healing. It wasn't just about remembering Dad, but about reconnecting with each other, reaffirming the bonds that his turmoil had tested but not broken. Looking forward, there's a lot to be done. The legal matters will likely drag on for a while longer, but we're prepared for that now. What's more important, and what we've come to realize, is how we come together as a family. Our relationships have deepened, becoming more honest and open. Michael, Mom, and I have found new ways to support each other, to build on the legacy of the good parts of Dad's life, not just the shadow of his mistakes. This final update isn't just a conclusion to a tumultuous chapter, it's a beginning too. A start to a new phase where we, as a family, learn from the past, appreciate the present, and look to the future with a cautious but real optimism. Thank you to everyone who's followed this journey, shared advice, or just read along. Your support has been invaluable. As we close this chapter, we take the lessons, the love, and even the pain, as reminders of what we've overcome and what we aspire to become. Here's to moving forward, together,